Now we have to start with the term next topic. Okay, that is called as the productions. And here we have to study how the production to be takes place. What are the different process of the productions, and thereafter we also be enter into the terms of what is the certain productions functions, what is the long run productions functions. Then next concept is the so what is the economies of scale, what is the diseconomies of scale, those things we have to start in this particular topic. Okay, let's start with the term what is the meaning of the productions. Actually, the productions means creation of utility having some excess value. If you create certain utility and that utility, creating that particular utility which have some sort of excess value, that is called as the productions. Like for example, as you know, the term utility means that is the one satisfying power of a particular commodity. Utility means one satisfying power of a commodity. If a particular commodity you have to purchase, let's say you have to purchase a pen, and pen have some sort of utilities. Okay, pen have some sort of utilities. And when we purchase that one, why we are producing that? Because it has some sort of utility. If there is some sort of utility, then it is called the productions. Then if it is not so, then we can't say it is not called the productions. Take into account anything. Creation of utility having some excess value. Let for example a duster. Duster will be required in order to erase the board. That means duster have some sort of utility, so you have to producing the duster. Like for example the marker. You have to producing the term marker. Why? Because the marker has some sort of utilities. So which have some utility and having some excess value, that is called the productions. Right? A simple way we can say that the creation, conversion of input into the output. When the input factor it is converted into the output, that also be known as the productions. Right? And the transformations of input into the output. When you transform, take into account that for example, if you as a patient you have to enter into the hospital, and after curing, after your, let's say your disease to be cured, you have to come out after the perfect person. Then in that case, that transformations also be known as the productions. So the productions with the transformations of the input to the output, because you are the patient to be treated as the input factor for the hospital, and hospital there is a processing zone, the productions zone, and it is the outcome, it is the curing the disease. Then in that case again it is called the productions process also. The conversions or transformations of the input into output. Suppose you are, let's say, student for a particular school or the college. So in that case, the student to be treated as the input factor for the school or the colleges. In that case, that one is to be known as the input for the college or the student, that is called the schools. But the instruments, like for example, the your pedagogy is to be there, your course and curriculums are there. Those things are to be treated as what? Input factors. I mean, those are the processing. Okay, teachers and the processing jobs are there. When the teachers and the process to be then provide the teaching and so on, then thereafter you have to appear the exam, then pass out, right? That to getting a degree, then it is called the productions. So that are different component of your productions are there, right? After knowing those sort of things, let's start with the term what is productions. We have to start with the sharing the screen and then proceed further. Let's start with the share the screen to be there. That's right. Okay, I think it is visible to almost all of you. Now we have to start with it. What is the meaning of the production? We already discussed what is the concept of the productions. Now we have to start with the productions. So what do you say the product? Our target is the productions functions. The productions functions means the transformations of the input into the output. How we have to transform, that we have to consider to be here. Production basically it is an active transformations which should be associated with the input and output, because transformations concept, as we cited the example of the hospitals, the patients. Similarly, you can take into account the movie hall or the theaters are there. If when you are the sad mood, you have to enter into that processing zone, that particular film or the then thereafter after watching that movie or that particular play or something else, you have to come out from that particular theater or movie hall then with a fresh mind. Then in that case again your mind to be transformed, sad to the good mood to be there, right? Or jolly mood to be there. So that way, that is the concept of the transformations. While you taking into account the transformations, we have to consider the two things. One is the input, and another is the output. For the hospital, patient to be treated as the input, and output is the curing the disease. For the movie hall, again, that I mean, all the spectators or the let's say the I mean, those are going to be watching that movie. That they may be treated as the consumer. They enter into that movie hall. That we treated as the input factor and output with the I mean with the sad mode, then have the outcome into the jolly mode to be there. Similarly, if you take into account the productions, let's say that to produce some electronics item, let's say for example, computers, let's say PCs. To producing the PC, you require large number of terms are there. You can take into account your motherboard, you can take into account let's say the different type of ports are there. Then so you have to that the different component inputs are there in a particular producing a PC. Then after that PC to be perfect, I mean check it and then after the producing that particular PC. That means input are there, they have to be allotment, that means assembling it will takes place, then after assembling the output is needed. Again it is the transformations of the raw material to the finished product. So the finished productivity to the output and raw material means your input factors are there, right? So the process of the transforming the input into the output, it can be the different varieties are there. It can be changes in the term of the form. If you change the form, then in that case, the raw material transformed to the finished product. Raw material transformed to the finished product. Similarly, if you change the place, also be treated as the productions. Let's say how enter the supply chain management process. I mean entire supply chain component starting from the processing the raw materials, right? I mean the procuring the raw materials, then enter into the factory, then it will be processing it, then output to be takes place, then it will be moved to the retailer to the wholesaler to be that, wholesaler after that retailer to the consumer, and after sales service also be there. So entire change in the place also be known as the productions. Here, if you're taking about the change in place, that is called in terms of service, right? If you change in the form, that is called the goods. So the production can be considering the both the terms, the production of the goods as well as the production of the services, right? Services means again you can take the case of the financial institutions. Any sort of things you can take in the banking institution. Again, there are the production zones are there because they have to be provide the different type of services to you people, like the opening of your accounts, the different varieties of accounts, so I mean creation of the DD and so on. Those things also providing the services are there. And the creating the services also we know that the productions. If you move to the salon to be there, we can move to the restaurants are there and different type of hotels are there. Again, those things also the service centers are there. They provide the services. Again, those things also we know that the productions. So the productions either it is the goods or the services. Basically, you people come across the term, yes, productions means when the raw material to be converted to the output. No, it is not so. It is not always that. Beside that, converting the input to the output, I mean raw material to the finished product, that is the change in form. That is called the production of the goods. You will take into account the change in place that they consider the production of the services. There are two type of productions are there. One is called the productions of the goods and the production of the services, which can be categorized in case of your change in form and change in places are there. Now, next move to the meaning of the productions. Production in economics, it refers to the creations of those goods and services. When you creating those goods and services which have some excess value, then it is called the productions. Otherwise, it should not be called the productions. So it is the creation of utilities having some excess value. All the goods, all the services we can take into account, which creates the utility. Then in that case, we can say it is called the productions. Otherwise, we can't say. The term the production as you cited, the dusters, markers are there, electronics items are there, any sort of vegetables or the fruits are there, anything you can take into any sort of goods are there. Those that convert and I mean the raw materials to be converted to finished product. But ultimately, almost all the product have excess value. It's not the free gift of the nature. Those are the free gift of the nature. They should not be treated as the productions, right? God should not be treated as the productions because if you take it in the mobile side, it's not free of trust, not to be produced, but you have to purchase it from the market. And the services also be that. While you enter into the salon, you have to take the service for that salon and you have to get the services. Then in that case, it's called the productions. Again, for the getting that service, you have to pay for it. If you move to the hotel, then in that case, you have to pay, to receiving the meal and so on. But if you do some sort of work inside in your home, in that case, again, you have to provide the services, but that does not give you some sort of returns. That does not pay to you. So in that case, it's not be treated as the productions. If you're washing your clothes, okay, if you're washing your own clothes, then it should not be treated as the production. But you have to provide that sort of things to the laundry, and laundry provide the services. You have to pay for that. Then in that case, it's called the productions, right? So the productions refers to the creation of those goods and services which have some excess value. Okay. Then utilities are in the nature of the form. There are the different varieties of utilities are there. The utility means the creation of, I mean, the one's satisfying power of a commodity. But that utility we can categorize into the different types. It may be form utility. You have to change the form. That means a wood to be converted into the desk or chair or something else, stool to be there. In that case, it is called the form. Change the form of the wood, then in that case, it has some sort of utilities. Then they change the time utility. Let for example, nowadays we find that in the summer season to be the rainy season there is no importance of the let's say woolen clothes are there, but we have to store the woolen clothes. When the winter to becomes, then we have to take the utilization of those woolen clothes. Then in that case, it's for the time utility. Service utility. Service utility, you can take the doctor service to the patients, mother service to the baby, teacher service to the students, and so on. Those are called the service utility. Place utility, you want to change the place. Suppose you can take into account that the sands are available in the riverside, but those are to be the not utilized there. But when we transform, I mean, when we change the place of those sands, or take that particular those sort of sands to the construction sites, then in that case, it has some sort of utilities. So in riverside, there is no use of sand. But if you move to the construction side, then it has some sort of utilities at there. So that the concept of the place utility. So all these type of utilities, and when you're creating it with some excess value, then it is called the productions. So the creation of such utilities results in the overall increase in the productions and redistributions of the goods and services in the economy. Okay, that's the main idea. What is the concept of the productions are there? Now, before we enter into the productions process, we have to know what are the kinds of the factors of productions. I mean, what are the major factors of productions which should be utilized inside the productions beside your raw materials? Then the four basic factors of the productions, such as land, labor, capital, and organizations are there. Now comes down to the term, what are the meaning of those terms are there? Land. What is the meaning of the land? Actually, the land means what you believe that yes, the piece of land to be available, then that sort of that the term is called the land, and it will figure of the nature. But that is not the concept of land to be alone. Land means you have to take into account the whole component, which is the free gift of the nature, right? Which is the free gift of the nature. Like your let's the mountains. You can take it the rivers. We can take into account also the minerals and mines are there. All these things also be treated as the land in economics. Remember, in terms of economics, I recited only in terms of economics. So the land refers to those factors of productive gift of the nature, which are the produced for the man. That to be free, it will be provided. It will be free gift of the nature, which should be provided to the man for the utilization purpose. And that the concept of the land. Whether it is the river, whether it is the mountain, whether it will be the lands to be there, whether it will be the riverside or something else. All these things. productions, which is the free gift of nature, are to be treated as land in economics. Then come down to the next bit, labor. Actually, the labor means the mental and physical exertions, that is the body and mind. Both the terms we have to exert, and that with in terms of the payment also. If you're using that in terms of the payment, then in that case it is called the labor. Otherwise, it should not be treated as the labor. Let, for example, if the teacher provide the teaching to his own son and daughters, then in that case it should not be treated as the labor, because the son and daughter not paid to the father in terms of some sort of money. Therefore, that term should not be used here. Labor should not be used here. Let's say the doctor treat his own mother, treat his own student, daughter and sisters and their own and their own family members in lieu of it, not receiving any sort of payment. Therefore, that in that particular service should not be treated as a labor. So the labor means when you use your mental and physical, that the body and mind, right? But in lieu of some payment, in excess of some payment, then in that case it is called the labor. Then come down to the terms third bit, capital. Because here the land and labor, they are to be treated as the primary factors of the productions. Capital to be treated as the tertiary factor of the production, secondary factor of the productions. Capitals are those, input factors which help in the further productions, right? I mean, those kind of wealth which or the other, remember it is the, other than the figure of the nature. We should not we already know all those figures of the nature treated as land, right? Other than those are the man-made concepts. Those are the man-made, which yield some sort of income. Then in that case, it's called the capital. As I cited in the very beginning in the previous classes, that the capital goods and consumer goods. If you're using the things for your own purpose, then it is called the consumer goods. But if you use for the, private or the public purpose, receiving some sort of income, then in that case, it's called the capital. Take for example, suppose you are to purchase a typewriter, but if you're using your typewriter for your own purpose, then it is called the consumer goods. But when the using that same typewriter for the job typing purpose, then in that case, it is called as a capital goods. Why it is called the capital? Because it provides some sort of income. It yields some income, therefore it is called the capital. Similarly, if you purchase a car for your own purpose, then in that case, it is to be treated the car to be treated as the consumer goods. But when you're using that car for the travel purpose, then in that case, it's called the capital goods. Remember, then what is the meaning of the capital? Capital means those kind of wealth which yields some sort of income. That's called the capital in economics. Specifically, I have to repeatedly told you all the things in terms of economics. Then come down to the term what is called the organizations. Actually, the organizations, it is not a major factor of the productions, but it coordinates the other factors of the production in the productions process. That means how much of land to be used, how much of labor to be utilized, how much of capital to be used in order to produce certain amount of the productions that to be undertaken by the organization. So it to be he is the entrepreneur, he is the kingpin in the entire productions process. He take all kind of risks in the productions process, right? Labor not taking the risks, capital not going to the, the owner of the land not going to the taking the risks in the production process. Laborers are, those who will be engaged inside the production process, they are not taking into account any kind of risks in the production process. And capitalist, those to be use his own fund in the production process, not going to be taking any kind of risks in the production process. Rather, it is the organizer, it is the entrepreneur who take all kind of risks in the production process. And for that reason, the profit to be paid to the entrepreneur or the organizations, right? Now, after knowing the four basic input factors of the productions, now move to the next concept, or the basic concept of this particular theory. Here, while you study the productions process or the productions functions, we have to take into account the input and output. Let's start the concept of the input factors. And here input means, as you know, to produce the product, we take raw material, we take land, we take labor, we take capital, we take different varieties of things. And for the different purpose of the productions, different terms to be treated as the input factors. For educational institutions, student to be treated as the input factors. For hospital, then in that case, we can take into account the patient to be treated as the input factors, right? So for producing certain product to be that goods, then in that case we can take into account the raw material to be treated with the input factors. For the services, service center, according to the service center, the type of service to be provided, those things to be treated as the input factors. But out of those input factors, some to be treated as the fixed input factors, some may be the variable factors. Fixed means what? Fixed factors are those factors which does not fluctuate along with the output. Whether the output increase or decrease, it should not be changes. Let for example, if you take into account the productions process of the any kind of goods to be there, the machineries used to be using the for the purpose of the production, they are to be treated as the fixed factor. Building to be treated as the fixed factor, right? Building to be treated as the fixed factor. The fixed employees, fixed staffs, they are to be treated as salary earners. They are to be treated as the fixed factors. Are there? They're the fixed input factors. Variable, those are the wage earners are there. Raw materials, fuel, all these things to be treated as the variable factor. Those factors the productions which should vary along with the production process, that is called the variable factors. Right? Now the fixed inputs actually an input for which the level of the users cannot be readily changes. Remember the term not going to be changed in the production process, like your building, like a let for example the machineries that will remains fixed, right? So therefore those to be treated as the fixed input factors. The fixed inputs is one those the supply is to be inelastic. If you take into account the economic sense is the inelastic in nature. The building cannot be increased. The number of building, let's say the number of apartment or the number of building to be there which will be used in the production zone, that to be remains constant in the short period. Short period means within certain time period, let's say within 1 month, 2 months. It is not so that you are to creating the new building within few, I mean, days are there. It's very difficult to do that. Similarly, the masons wanted to be used in the production process, those to be fixed process and fixed input factor, fixed capital to be utilized in the production process, which doesn't fluctuate in the production zone. I mean, if the production is going to be increased, it should not be increased the productions instantly. It may be increased in the lateral, it may be increases over the time period, but not in the short period. In technical sense, we can say that the fixed inputs is one that remain fixed for the certain level of output. Whether the output will increase or decrease, that does not change in the input. That is called as the fixed factor. In economic sense, whose supply is inelastic in nature, right? And variable means those that will vary along with the output. Those input factors will vary along with the output, which will be treated as the variable factors. It is to be elastic in nature. In economic sense, you can say it's the elastic in nature, right? For example, as you cited the raw materials, labor, etc. Those to be treated labor. But again, the labor are the two types. One type of labor which to be all salaries, and some other type of labor who are receiving the wage. The wage earner are called as the variable factors. The salary earners are to be treated as the fixed factors, right? So, in the technical sense, the variable factors are those factors which are to vary along with the output. And remember, it is possible in case of a short run, there may be exist some fixed factor and variable factor. But in the long run, all the input factors are the variable. Nothing going to be fixed in short and long run. All the input factors. Let's say building, let's say machineries used to be fixed in short run, but those are to be vary in the long run. Right. Now, what is the technical efficiency and economic efficiency? Technical efficiency means it is achieved when the maximum amount of output is to be produced with the given combinations of input factors. As you know, inputs are given to you. If you maximize, that means optimally utilize those inputs to maximize the output. That means our intent is to maximize the productions. And it is possible if we optimally utilize our input factors. Then in that case, it is called the technical efficiency. Economic efficiency means it to be achieved when a firm is producing a given level of output at a lowest possible total cost. That means, okay, if you take into account the economic sense, and in the case of the technical sense means those things which are available, we have to optimally use those available to produce more. Like let's say for a student, let's say 10 hours will be available in a day for the study purpose. And if you study, I mean, using those 10 hours to maximize your result, that is the technical efficiency. Use those 10-hour labor, maximize your mark, technical efficiency. Then you can maximize your mark. Let's say my target, you have to target, fix a target. Let's I have to targeting the 80%, 90% as marks I have to be obtained. Out of those 10 hours of, I mean, day for a day which are available for the study, you can using it as minimum possible of time to maximize your goal. That means, let's say with the 5 hour, 6 hour, you can reaching the 90% of mark or something else. That is called economic efficiency, right? Technical efficiency and economic efficiency. Now, so time now for the production functions. So we have to move to the basic concept. After knowing the basic idea, what is the productions, what is the productions process, and so on, move to the productions functions. So productions functions means it is a functional or the technical relationship between input and output. Right? So when we find a functional relationship or technical relationship between input and output, that's called the productions. If you cited the term, let's say, if you take the equations here, that the Q is to be treated as the output. This is the output factor. And all these are to be treated as the input. These are called as the input factors, right? And what is this function? This is called, this particular term is called as the functional relationship, or it may be treated as the technical relationship. This F stands for the functional and technical. So functional and technical relationship between the input and output, that's called as the production functions. Right? So what is the technique? Techniques means you may using the labor intensive method of production. You may using the capital intensive method of the productions. And you already know the concept. What are the input factors? Input may be fixed, input may be variable. And you know the four basic input factors are there: land, labor, capital, organizations. Okay, then we can take into account the raw materials, your fuel, etc. Those to be treated as the input factors. And output, you know that the different type of, I mean, whether you are going to be produce the product or the produce the services. You produce the goods, then goods to be treated as the output. You produce the services, services to be treated as the output. So when we convert those input into the output, that called as the production functions. The functional relationship between input and output is called as the production functions. Let's say we can, instead of x1, x2, x3, and we have to take into account, let's say, the two input factors. One is called the labor and second one is the capital. Right? Here, Q stands for the output. And if you know that the functional relationship between input and output. If you take into account the short run, some to be treated as the fixed factors, some to be treated as the variable factors. Right? Let's say if this is the functions are there, if you study the purpose the short run, we can say capital to be fixed, labor to be variable. But if you take into account the long run, your output, it is a function of you are taking into account the labor as well as the capital, but both capital and labor both will be treated as a variable. All are variable in long run. But here we have to assume capital to be the fixed factor and labor to be the variable in the short run. So productions can be takes place either in case of your short run or in case of your long run. Short run means there may be some fixed and some variable factor. Long means all the input factors are variable. That and if you take into account the, I mean, technically you can say the short run means it take into account some short time period, and long run means over the time period. Okay, over a long period of time. So that the two type of productions are there. One is called the short run productions, and second is called the long run productions. As we know that in case of your search run, it is we take the two input factors. One is called the capital, and second one is called the labor. But we take capital to be sorry. You can take the capital to be the fixed factor and labor to be the variable factor, right? So which one is the important role? Which play? This is the fixed factor, and this is called the variable factor. Which plays an important role to the providing the output. This is the variable factor. Which one we have to increase? Our intention is to maximize the output. That means we have to increase the output. Which one is responsible for that? Fixed factor not going to be changed. Only the variable factor we are going to be increased. So as the variable factor is responsible for the increase in the output, therefore the shortened production function to be known as law of variable proportion. The shortened production function to be known as the law of variable proportion. Why it is called the law of variable proportion? Because our intention to increase the output, and to increasing the output we have to increase the input factors. But out of those input factors, we know capital is a fixed factor, labor is a variable factor. Then what to do? We have to increase only the variable factor. As the variable factor is the sole responsible for the rise in the output, therefore it is called as the law of variable proportion. So in certain, at least one input factor to be fixed and change all the input factors, all the other input factors. But basically, we have for our simple purpose or the explanation purpose, I take into account two input factors are there: capital and labor. Capital to be treated as the fixed factor, labor to be treated as the variable factor. To increase the output, we have to increase the variable factor. That the concept of the law of variable proportion or certain production function. Now moves to long term. In long run, as you know, your output, it is a functions of your both input factors. I mean, we take into account capital and your labor. And in long run, all are variable, nothing to be fixed, nothing to be going to be fixed. As all things are the variable, therefore it is called as the change in scale. This is called the change in scale. Let us read it here. It is called the change in scale. When all input are variable, that is called the change in scale. Now the question to be raised is, to increase the output, then what to do? Now we have to increase the change in scale. So the change in scale is the responsible for the increasing output. Therefore, in the long run, it is known as return to scale. Right? So there are the two type of production functions: short-run production functions and long-run production functions. Short-run production functions to be known as law of variable proportion, whereas in the long run it is known as return to scale. Right? Now it is clear. Why the short-run called as the law of variable proportion? Because the variable factors are responsible for the rise in the production functions. But in the long run, as you know, all the input factor variable, that's called the change in scale. And to increase the production, we have to change the scale. Therefore, return takes place due to the change in scale. Therefore, in this long run, it is called the return to scale. Now we start with the first bit of it: short-term production functions. The short-term production function, as you know, it is a law of variable proportion, right? Then what does that law tells us? Actually, there are the different definitions are there for the short-term production functions or the long, that is called the law of variable proportions. I take the most important definitions of that, which is provided by, that is the Alfred Marsons, as the proportion of one factor in a combination of the factor is increased after a point. First, the marginal product and then average product decreases. Or in the other way, you can define the other definitions like when we increase the input factors along with the fixed factors. First, the total product increases at an increasing rate. Thereafter, it increases at a diminishing rate. So, what the definitions once again? When we take into account the variable factor, let's try to write down here. Here we take the fixed factor and the variable factor. Right? You already know what is the fixed and what is variable. right? When we know we are inside the short term, so fixed to be fixed. Then what the definition tells us? When the variable factors are increases along with the fixed factor remains constant. Fixed factor remains constant. When the variable factor increases and the fixed factor, what did it explain? The total product first increases at an increasing rate. First increases at an increasing rate. Then after that, total product increases at a diminishing rate. Why it is so? Initially, when the variable factors are increases, along with the fixed factor, total product increases at an increasing rate. Thereafter, total product increases at a diminishing rate. I can cite the simple example alongside with the you people also. Let's say, for example, suppose when you back to your childhood, right? During that time period, your result to be increases. Your result to be increases. Initially, it is increases, and it will be increases up to 10 standard, max to max, right? Your result will be increases and increasing rate. But after that, you can find the result will be increases and diminishing rate. But why it is so? There may be some exceptional cases out there. You should not consider in those exceptional cases. But in the majority cases, your marks to be increases initially at increasing rate. After that, your marks to be increases at diminishing rate. Similarly, if you take into account any other things, suppose you purchase the vehicles are there or any sort of electronics gadget to be there. Initially, it's the performance to be increases. Initially, the performance to be increases, but after utilizing few months or the few years, the performance of those machineries are to be going to be reduced. If you take a piece of land, let's say for example, another example, if you take a piece of land to produce some amount of agricultural product, initially the your production to be increases at an increasing rate, right? Because you have to there exists maybe the existence of the extensive method of the cultivation. You cultivate the small piece of land, then you have to increase this piece of land one by one, right? Then what you find, the entire land to be cultivated till that total product to be increases. I mean, the agricultural production to be increases at an increasing rate. And after that, there may be after the full amount of the utilization of the land, that is the extensive utilization of land, then you have to start using it intensive cultivations. Intensive means you can using the chemical fertilizers and pesticides into producing more and more. But after some period, what you find, your production increases and diminishing rate. Why? Because the fertility of the land to be reduces. Because of the fertility of the land to be going to be reduces. That the general concept, what is called the law of variable proportions. What the variable proportion tells us, when the variable factors are increases along with the fixed factors, total product increases at an increasing rate. After that, total product increases at a diminishing rate. Or initially, when the variable factors increases with the fixed factor, total product, I mean, first the marginal product, then average product to be decreases. First the marginal product decrease, then the average product decreases. While we explain any law in economics, it based upon certain assumptions. Let's say we have to proceed with those assumptions, right? What are those set of assumptions? Just a minute. Just a minute. That's it. Assumptions. The most important assumption is that only one factor to be made variable and all factors to be kept as constant. In certain, we are inside the certain. So our intention is that we always take only one variable factor, and rest of the things it will remain constant. Move to the second. Second assumption tells us all these input factors which are to be variable, those are to be taken as the variable factors. Those to be changes in a fixed proportion. Fixed proportion means, suppose you have to take into account the labor. Labor to be increases 1 hour each, or labor to be increases 1 day by 1 day. Okay, remember the term labor and laborer. Don't confuse, because I already defined the term what is called the labor. Labor means mental and physical exertion backed by certain payment. Labor means the working hour. the working hour to be increases, let's say to be 1 by 1. 1 by 1 hour it increases, it may be 1 by 1 day to be increases, or 1 by 1 week to be increases like that. It will be changes in the fixed proportion. It should not be changes. Let's say today I have to be increased by 2 hours, tomorrow we have to increase by the 2 days and something. No, it is not so. It will be increased in the fixed proportion. And all the input factors will be treated as the variable. Variable factor have to be the homogeneous. Homogeneous means identical in nature. Those factors, that means the productivity power of each and every laborer to be remain the same. The cultivation power of each and every land to be treated as the same. That is called the homogeneous. Homogeneous means identical in nature. Then input price to be remain unchanged. While you are taking into account the production process, all the inputs to be used are to be their prices to be remains constant. The prices should not be fluctuate during the production process. If the price fluctuated, then production to be going on, no doubt, no problem about it. But the output, it may be changed. That puts some impact upon the output. Therefore, we have to assume it to be remains constant. Given technology, there is no change in the technological knowledge. The technology, if you're using the labor intensive or capital intensive, that to be remains constant. In between, we can't using it. You can change it, interchanging it. Not possible. And the last, the most important assumption is that this law is applicable only in the short term. Considering that definition and considering these assumptions, we have to start this certain production process. But if you go back to the term that is called the definitions, inside that definitions, we come across three most important terms: total product, marginal product, and average product. Because law tells us when the variable factors are increases along with the fixed factor, total product increases initially at the increasing rate, thereafter increase at the diminishing rate. Another definition tells us when the variable factors increases with the fixed factor, first the marginal product, then the average product to be diminishes. So the three terms are there: total, marginal, and average. What is total product? Actually, it gives the maximum of output that can be produced at the different level of one input factors, assuming the other factor to be remains fixed. So that means we have to using the variable factor and the fixed factor to producing the output. The total amount of output, what it be produces, that to be remains fixed. And that is called as the total product, total amount of the product that it will be there. Then come down to the marginal product. Actually, the marginal product means addition made to the total product by producing one more unit of the variable factors. When the variable factor to be increases, if the variable factor to be increases, let's say the labor to be increased by 1 hour. If an additional 1 hour to be there, and that additional 1 hour of the labor, if it increases, how much total product to be increased? And that increasing the total product is called the marginal product. So addition made to the total product by producing by using one more unit of input factors, right? Keeping other things to be constant. That is called the marginal product. Then come down the average product. Average product means per unit of output. Per unit of output means how much output that we are going to be produced with using the input factors. It can be calculated total product divided by number of input factor to be utilized. Let's say now move to the in equations how to representing all these three things. If we start with the total product is to be here. That is the total product means total amount of output that will be produced by using the fixed and variable factors. Marginal product means change in total product due to the change in input factors. And average product means total product divided by total amount of input factors. Remember this one, the marginal product, it can be treated as the derivative of the total product, derivative of your total product with respect to the labor. Derivative of total product with respect to your labor, that is called as the marginal product. Addition made to the total product. Or you can take into account marginal product, it can be calculated. Marginal product can be calculated of the nth unit by taking into account the difference between two successive total product. Means total product of n minus total product of n minus 1. Total product of n minus 1. Difference between two successive total product also be known as the marginal product. And average product means total amount of the production divided by total input factors. As I take the variable factor to be labor, so just average product of labor can be calculated total product divided by number of variable factors. And this is the very important point, that your productions rate of productions or the output elasticity, it can be calculated marginal product divided by the average product. Marginal product divided by average product. You can calculate the total product. You can calculate the total product by another way to be that. Let's say the total product can be calculated your average product multiplied by number of variable factor to be used in the productions process. Right? Average product divided by number of variable factor used, that also be known as the marginal total product. So in this way, we can define the term what is marginal, average, and your total product, and thereafter the production's elasticity. Okay. After knowing it, next come down to how we explain this law with the help of the table as well as the figure. Right? We have to elaborate right now with the help of a table and the figure. What the definitions tells us? The definitions tells us the existence of some fixed factor and a variable factor, because we take into account here output. It is a functions of the input factors, right? And here I take the input to be labor and capital, right? And this capital to be fixed factor. As I cited, the capital to be, let's say, use the 10 acres of the land. 10 acres of the land to be there into producing the agricultural output. And variable factor is the labor. Labor to be utilized, to be increased by 1 hour, right? Using 1 hour, then another 1 hour, then another 1 hour, then so on. It will be increased by that. And Q is the output to be produced. Now come to the definitions. What the definition tells us? The first is 0. This is the initial phase. All are to be 0. Fixed factor to be using 0. Variable factor to be using 0. Therefore, there is no amount of the productions. Okay. Now comes to the definitions. When the variable factors are increases, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, it is increase, right? When the variable factors are increases along with the fixed factor, these are the fixed factor, tend to be always there, fixed factor, right? Across of land, it's fixed factors. When the variable factors are increases along with the fixed factor, total product, market, total product increases at an increasing rate. Up to this market, it increases at an increasing rate. First, it's increased by 10, 0 to 10. Then it increased by 12. Then it increases by 14. Then it increases by 16, right? So that means how it be increases? It is increases by increasing rate. Total product increases at an increasing rate. But after that, it increases. After that, it will be increases at a diminishing rate. Market. It increases, no doubt. When the variable factors are increases, market, still variable factor for the increases, along with the fixed factor, total product, what you find, it increases at a diminishing rate. Here it is the increasing rate. Right now it will be increases at a diminishing rate. How it increases at diminishing rate? Market, how much it will increases right now? It is increases by 10 units. How much it increases by 4 units? How much increases by 2 units? Okay, so that means it increases at a diminishing rate. Here it increases at an increasing rate. So that is your definition. When the variable factors are increases along with the fixed factor, total product initially increases at increasing rate, thereafter it increases at diminishing rate. Now comes to the second definition. What the second definition tells? The second definition tells that when the variable factors are increases along with the fixed factor, right? Then the first the marginal product. Okay. Now the question to be arranged is, okay, how do you calculate it to show you later on, but first want to move to the definitions. What the definition tells us? When the variable factors are increases with the constant fixed factor, then The marginal product increases initially. This is the marginal product market. The marginal product is increases. Marginal product increases, right? Thereafter, it reduces, right? But average product continuously increases market here. It increases up to this. Thereafter, it is to be reduces. So which reduce first? First the marginal product, thereafter the average product, and that is the definition. That is the definition given us. What the definition gives us? When the variable factors are increases along with the fixed factor, first the marginal product and thereafter the average product to be decreases. Okay, so we cleared the definitions with the help of the table. Now, how the table to be prepared? How to remembering it? It is very simple. So first column are to be very simple. Take the fixed factor to be 100, 10, 50, 1000 as your choice. That will be remains fixed. Variable factor always try to increase by one. Let's say 1, 2, 3, 4. Very simple. We have to increasing it like that. Now here the technique is there. The technique is that you have to calculate. We are preparing the table. I am providing the preparing the table. Now how to read the table. Now in order to prepare the table, first of all you have to put the marginal to be increased like this. You have to put the numbers which should be in the increasing order. You have to put the number in an increasing order. 10, 12, to increase further. 10, 12, 14, 16. Okay. Then after that, you have to increase at a diminishing. That means you have to start with the diminishing. 2, 2. Okay. We can take the 2, 2, 2, 4. Choice is yours. But remember the way you have to decrease again. Then you have to initially decrease by 4. I mean 2. Then decrease by more than that. Then decrease. Then decrease. Then decrease. Then 0. Then that you have to remember. This particular column is to be very, very essential. Right? First we take the 10, then 12, then 14, then 16, right? Then 14. Then you can choose like this way. We can take the 12, no problem about it. You can take the 12, then 10, then 8, and so on. The choice is yours, right? But we have to make it some 0, then negative. Now, how to calculating the total product? Just take the cumulative of it. Initially 0, 0 plus 10, 10, 10 plus 12 is 22, 22 plus 14 is 36, and so just take the cumulative of it. Take the cumulative of it, right? You know the cumulative frequency in statistics. Just take the cumulative of it. Then comes to the term what is called the average product. Average product means total product. You can change the ink to be that. Just a minute. We have to change the ink. Okay, that's right. Here total average product it will be calculated. The total product divided by the number of variable factors. That means these are the variable factors to be that. Now 10 divided by 1, 10, 22 divided by 2, 11, 36 divided by 3, 12, 52 divided by 4, and so on. That way you have to calculate it. If you say now I have to start with the total product, then it will increase by 10, then it increases by more than 10, let's say the 12, then it increases by more than 12, that is the 14, then it will increases more than 12, 14, then it will be 16, and so on. If you do that way, then its choice is yours, right? But how to calculate the marginal product? Marginal product in that case, you can be calculate total product of n minus total product of n minus 1. Total product of n minus 1. Take the difference between two successive total product. That first is to be blank, then 10 minus 0, 10, 22 minus 10, 12, 36 minus 12, 14, 52 minus 36, 15, and so on. That way you have to calculating this. Okay. Now after that, after doing the preparations of the table, then the law of variable proportions also be elaborate with this help of the table. And this law, okay, before stages, forget about the stages. We have prepared it with the help of the table. Now we have to show it with the help of the figure. While we show it with the help of the figure to me looks like this. This is the figure for the total product. Right? What the total product? Total product increases at an increasing rate. Market. The curve is to be convex. Right? After that, after this particular point, the curve it will be concave in nature. It reaches its maximum point. It reaches its maximum point, then fall. right? So up to this, what you find, it increases at an increasing rate. After that, it increases at a diminishing rate, right? Then reaches its maximum, then falls. Okay, then falls. Okay, so that means total product initially increases at the increasing rate. This is the convex in nature. Thereafter, it is a concave in nature, which reaches its maximum point, vertically below this particular J point, what is written there. Then the point H is there, the point of inflection. The conversion increase and increasing rate to the increase at a diminishing rate. This is the point of inflection. You can write down the term inflection, INFLXTION. Okay, so this is the point of inflections, and this is the point H, conversions point. Increase to increasing rate to increase at a diminishing rate. And this is the maximum point. Then it will be fall, right? You go back to the table also shows the same sort of things. Total product increases at the increasing rate, right? Then it increases at a diminishing rate, reaches its maximum at 82. Here is the maximum point, 82, and corresponding to that, marginal to be 0. We have to right now start with that marginal curve. While you take the curve, the marginal is nothing but the slope of the total. Derivative of the total is called the marginal. So the slope of the total is called the marginal product. And mark it. When total increases at the increasing rate, marginal increases. When total increases at the increasing rate, marginal increases. When total start, I mean after the point of inflection, when total start increase at diminishing rate, then the marginal product will be diminishes. When total reaches its maximum, marginal becomes 0, right? Marginal becomes 0. Okay, and when total falls, marginal becomes negative. So considering this, we have to move to the curve, and the curve tells us when total increases at an increasing rate, the this particular things marginal continuously increases, right? Then it reaches its maximum point, then fall, right? And it becomes 0 vertically below the point of the maximum. When it is the maximum, it becomes 0, and when it falls, then it becomes negative. And what about the average? Average continuously increases until it reaches the maximum. Thereafter, it will continuously falls. But remember, it never touches this axis. It is asymptotical to that axis. It is asymptotical to that particular axis, right? So now, after knowing the curve, this curve it will split into three parts. This to this is the one part, right? And thereafter, this in between is another part, and after that we did the third part. These are the three stages of the production functions. The stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3. Three stages of the production functions. Stage 1 is known as the law of increasing returns. Stage 2 is known as the law of diminishing returns. Stage 3 is to be known as law of negative returns, right? And that also be depicted in the figure, I mean the table. When the total, I mean marginal, right, increases until it above the average. When it above the average, mark it is more than the average, right? That is up to that, it is called the increasing returns. This is called the increasing returns. When marginal lie below the average, it's called the diminishing returns. When marginal becomes negative, it's called the negative return. So there are the three stages, and what are those three stages, and in which way those three stages to occur, and which one to be preferable by the producers, always we have to discuss in the coming class. Okay, that's all for today. Thank you to all.